Hey everyone, it is me, Dom. I am here with a new poet today. I'm super excited to share this poet in particular just because there was a poet by him that was sent to me via TikTok, and I'm really excited when people kind of share things. I know a lot of people will share poets and sometimes I miss it, sometimes I don't. Life happens, but this one kind of stayed on my mind, and so I'm really excited to kind of share some information about him and then go ahead and read the poem that was shared to me. So let's get started. The name of this poet is William Butler Yeats. I am gonna go ahead and kind of go through this sparingly just because it is a lot of information, and I kind of feel like obviously all of it would be nice, but I feel like it's not always necessary. So I want to go ahead and again just kind of pick things that I feel are important or that to me kind of really speak out to me, that makes him particular in his type of writing and what he writes about. So we'll get started. William Butler Yeats is widely considered to be one of the greatest poets of the 20th century. Sorry guys, it's so loud, what can I say? He belonged to the Protestant Anglo-Irish minority that had controlled the economic, political, social, and cultural life of Ireland since at least the end of the 17th century. Most members of this minority considered themselves English people who happened to have been born in Ireland, but Yeats staunchly affirmed his Irish nationality. Although he lived in London for 14 years of his childhood and kept a permanent home there during the first half of his adult life, Yeats maintained his cultural roots, featuring Irish legends and heroes in many of his poems and plays. He was equally firm in adhering to his self-image as an artist. This conviction led many to accuse him of elitism, but it also unquestionably contributed to his greatness. As a fellow poet, W.H. Auden noted in 1948 Kenyon Review essay entitled Yeats as an Example, Yeats accepted the modern necessity of having to make a lonely and deliberate choice of the principles and presuppositions in terms of which made sense of his experience. Auden assigned Yeats to the high praise of having written some of the most beautiful poetry of modern times. Perhaps no other poet stood to represent the people and country as poignantly as Yeats. Both during and after his life, his poetry is widely read today across the English-speaking world. In 1885, an important year in Yeats' early adulthood life, his poetry was published for the first time in the Dublin University Review, and he had begun his important interest in occultism. It was also the year that he had met John O'Leary, a famous patriot who had returned to Ireland after 20 years of imprisonment and exile for revolutionary nationalistic activities. O'Leary had a keen enthusiasm for Irish books, music, and ballads, and he encouraged young writers to adopt Irish subjects. Yeats, who had preferred more romantic settings and themes, soon took O'Leary's advice, producing many poems based on Irish legends, Irish folklore, and Irish ballads and songs. As he explained in a note included in the 1908 volume, Collected Works in the Verse and Prose of William Butler Yeats, when I first wrote, I went here and there for my subjects, and as my reading led me, and preferred to all other countries, Arcadia and the India of romance. But presently I convinced myself that I should never go for the scenery of a poem to any country but my own, and I think that I shall hold to that conviction to the end. As Yeats began concentrating his poetry on Irish subjects, he was compelled to accompany his family in moving to London at the end of 1886. There he wrote poems, plays, novels, and short stories, all with Irish characters and scenes. In addition, he produced book reviews, usually on Irish topics. In London, Yeats met with Maud Gonne, a tall, beautiful, socially prominent young woman passionately devoted to Irish nationalism. Yeats soon fell in love with Gonne and courted her for nearly 3 decades. Although he eventually learned that she had already borne 2 children from a long affair, with Gonne's encouragement, Yeats redoubled his dedication to Irish nationalism and produced such nationalistic plays as The Countess Kathleen, 1892, which he dedicated to her, and Kathleen Holohan, 1902, which featured her as the personification of Ireland in the title role. Gone shared Yeats' interest in occultism and spiritualism. Yeats had been a therapist, but in 1890 he turned from his sweeping mystical insights and joined the Golden Dawn, a secret society that practiced ritual magic. Yeats remained an active member of the Golden Dawn for 32 years, becoming involved in its direction at the turn of the century and achieving the coveted 6th grade of membership. In 1914, the same year that his future wife, Georgina Hadleys, also joined the society. Although Yeats' occult ambitions were a powerful force in his private thoughts, the Golden Dawn's emphasis on the supernatural clashed with his own need as a poet for interaction in the physical world, and thus in his public role he preferred to follow the example of John Keats, a romantic poet who remained in comparison with romantics William Blake and Percy Bysshe Shelley. Relatively close to the materials of life, Yeats avoided that he considered the obscurity of Blake, whose poetic images came from mystical visions rather than from the familiar physical world. Even so, Yeats' visionary and idealistic interests were more closely aligned with those of Blake and Shelley than those of Keats. And in 1899 collection of The Wind Among the Reeds, he employed occult symbolism in several poems. Most of Yeats' poetry, however, uses symbols from ordinary life and from familiar traditions, and much of his poetry in the 1890s continued to reflect his interest in Irish subjects. During this decade, he also became increasingly interested in poetic techniques. He befriended English decadent poet Lionel Johnson, and in 1890 they helped found the Rhymers Club, a group of London poets who met to read and discuss their poems. The Rhymers placed a very high value on subjectivity and craftsmanship and preferred sophisticated aestheticism to nationalism. The club's influence is reflected in the lush density of Yeats' poetry of the times, culminating in The Wind Among Reeds, 1899. Although Yeats was soon to abandon the lush density, he remained permanently committed to the Rhymers' insistence that a poet should labor a rhythm and cadence at form and style, as he reportedly told a Dublin audience in 1893. So I'm going through this, and there is a lot more. I want to say, in short, he became really involved in theater after that and kind of went down this path where he, where is it? Yeah, he really just like became super, so. While Yeats fulfilled his duties as president of the Abbey Theatre Group for the first 15 years of the 20th century, his nationalistic fervor was less evident. Maud Gonne had moved to Paris with her husband, exiled Irish revolutionary John McBride, and the author was left without her encouragement. But in 1960, he once again became a staunch exponent of the nationalist cause, inspired by the Easter Rising, an unsuccessful 6-day armed rebellion of Irish Republicans against Britain in Dublin. McBride, who was now separated from Gonne, participated in the rebellion and was executed afterward. Yeats reacted by writing Easter 1916, an eloquent expression of his complex feelings of shock, romantic admiration, and a more realistic appraisal. Yeats also continued to explore mysticism. Only 4 days after the wedding, his bride began what would be a lengthy experiment with the psychic phenomenon called automatic writing, in which her hand and pen presumably served as unconscious instruments for the spirit world to send information. Yeats and his wife held more than 400 sessions of automatic writing, producing nearly 4,000 pages that Yeats avidly and patiently studied and organized. For these sessions, Yeats From these sessions, Yeats formulated theories about life and history. He believed that certain patterns existed, and most important being what he called gears, interpreting cones representing mixtures of opposite of both a personal and historical nature. He contended that gears were initiated by the divine impregnation of a mortal woman, first the rape of led by Zeus, later the Immaculate Conception of Mary. Yeats found that within each 2,000-year era, emblematic moments occurred in the midpoints of the 1,000-year halves. At these moments of balance, he believed a civilization could achieve special excellence, and Yeats cited as examples the splendor of Athens at 500 BC, Byzantium at AD 500, and Italian Renaissance at AD 1500. Interesting. So yeah, there was a lot that Yeats kind of did throughout his life, all surrounding writing and theater and poetry and just creative endeavors. I feel like as different things influenced him through his travels and just aging, he definitely, would kind of steer off into different paths of what he wanted to write about versus what he felt like he should write about. If you are interested, I will go ahead and leave the link to this if you want to read the full description, because it is a lot. And it is very interesting how, again, just the different things that he kind of explores. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and share the poem that was shared to me. So thank you. And let's go ahead and get into that. The title of it is When You Are Old by William Butler Yeats. And this was written in 1989, so it was a little bit later on from when he first started writing. When you're old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read a dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and loved your beauty with love false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly, how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. So that was the poem that was shared with me. And I think the one thing that I find beautiful about it is kind of like this self-reflection of just life in itself, and again, things that you go through. I think when you're, I don't know, at least for me, when I think of life and being old and that, I think of a story in a book and how everyone has their own path that they went through and own little experiences that lead to big moments. And I think that's what's so beautiful about life, because even in these big moments, like let's say two people have these similar big moments, what led them to those moments are vastly different. And I think that makes all the difference in how they, I don't want to say appreciate those big moments, but how they go about those big moments and what happens after. Because even though, two people are at the same place at the same time, how they got there, completely different. And I think that's something so remarkably beautiful, because you could never replicate someone's life. You could never truly understand. And I think that's what's beautiful. When I was younger, I always felt misunderstood, and I always felt like it was such a negative thing that no one truly got me. But as I've gotten older and as I've, explored more things in life, I appreciate it, because it's something that I can take with me and I can always hold on to it and use it in many ways that I want to. So I am just very appreciative of that. And again, I feel like this is just kind of little little snippets of words that are showing how he, you know, views life and views, you know, things changing, not just inside you, but also physically. So yeah, again, I'm super excited to kind of read more of his poems, especially after learning more about him and his interesting writing techniques and influences, especially with, I feel like in the 20th century, it was such a wild time because just so many things, so many reasons. I mean, it really was a different time. There were so many, like, life was different, the way that people thought, priorities, things, is in comparison to now, where it's like we live in such a digital age, and, you know, aesthetics and, you know, what's trendy and cool, and down to something that you drink on a daily basis, like matcha. Like, it's actually insane. So I feel like without obviously all of this and all this awareness of what's cool and what's not and fitting in, people were just so authentically themselves, and they went down these rabbit holes, and how they were exposed to it was very, very, like, one thing led to the next, which I like to think of myself as like that. Like, things that I learn about and that are usually by word of mouth rather than me being online. Of course, I go down rabbit holes, but most of my experiences are in person and really just being there. Like, some people are like, how did you do this, or how did this happen? I literally was just like, I was just there. Like, I was in the moment experiencing that energy and just being present. And it's so cool because, yeah, overall, excited to share more things of him. And just, so I got cut off because my alarm went off because I have somewhere to be. So I guess that's my sign to end this chat today. So I hope y'all enjoyed that, and again, I hope that y'all explore more and we can chat about it. But yeah, have a good rest of your day and take care.